Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with the iconic business mogul Dave Tuccaro, who also is a court judge on the Bears Lair TV show. Dave talks about growing up, being a natural born entrepreneur from humble beginnings, to creating companies with annual revenues of over $2 billion. But most importantly, we talk about finding a balance in family and life. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Lair. We are so thrilled to have a very close colleague and one of our best friends, Dave Tuccaro, here today. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery. I'm your co-host. I'd like to introduce my co-host.
Hi, I'm Dean Montgomery. I'm Cree Métis from northern Saskatchewan, and love having Dave here today.
Welcome, Dave. I'll tell everybody about our friend Dave Tuccaro here. Dave is a proud member of the Mikisew Cree First Nation in Fort Chipewyan and the president and CEO of multiple successful companies, Tuccaro Group of companies. Dave is very active in the Indigenous and non-Indigenous space and communities. Dave is also the founder of the Northeastern Aboriginal Business Association, which features over 100 member companies with combined revenues of over $2 billion. A member of the National Task Force on Oil and Sand Strategy and the National Aboriginal Financing Task Force, Dave also served as the chair of Aboriginal Business Canada Market Expansion Group. He has sat on the board of the Regional Health Authority as well as the Alberta Chamber of Commerce. As the board of chair of Indspire, an Indigenous-led registered charity that invests in the education of Indigenous people, Dave is helping to set strategic direction for the National Aboriginal Achievement Awards and deepen the organization's support of K-12 education and Indigenous teachers across Canada. He also has 3 honorary doctorates. Welcome, Dave Tuccaro.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Me too. I get chills hearing your intro. Your bio. It's incredible.
And this is only one to our audience who's watching and listening. This is only a tiny little piece of a 6-page biography for Dave Tuccaro. So we're so thrilled to have you. You are a personal friend. You're a business icon. You have been leading the way in philanthropy for so many decades and really show that there is profit with purpose. And I just really want to put my hands up and thank you for being here with us today, and maybe introducing yourself as you would to the audience and telling our audience a little bit how the great Dave Tuccaro started out.
How I started out as a businessman.
First of all, where did you grow up? How was your childhood?
Oh no, I remember the Mikisew Cree First Nation out of Fort Chipewyan. Uh, I grew up. It was pretty humble beginnings. There's not really that much in Fort Chip back then. Excuse me, my voice is kind of harsh from screaming so hard yesterday at watching that hockey game. No, my father was a trapper. When you're running a trap line, my dad was. There's all kinds of things you have to do to prepare your to help your dad get ready for the trapping season, and a lot of that is raising dogs because it was dog teams and sleds back then. That was the mode of transportation. So my mother used to raise the dogs, the pups, raise them to pull a sleigh. There's no electricity or power, so we had to make sure that there was enough wood around to heat the house in the wintertime. Uh, all those things that are done when you have no electricity and no power. So that's kind of where I think I get my first uh, exposure to being a businessman, where in any kind of business, you have to have a plan. Uh, you have to execute. You have to go out there and make things happen. A lot of times you have to do it beforehand and get ready. So it's not unlike running, a huge corporation today. Uh, when I first started making my own money, I think it was uh, in the schoolyard where our principal, Sister Brady, had a marble program. So you could buy marbles from her on Monday, and on Friday you could sell the marbles back. And 50 cents, you buy 50 marbles. And throughout the week, you play marbles with other kids on the playground and in town. And sometimes I take 500, 600 marbles back to her on Friday. So for me, that was a pretty good return on investment. Uh, like I said, you always have to plan, but you have to practice a lot. And in order to win marbles, you have to be better than everybody else in the school ground to make some marbles. Uh, but that was a good feeling, just earning your own money. You know, from 50 cents to $5 or $6, that's a pretty good return on investment.
I love how you say that, and I love how you compare, growing up in nature and working, with the dog sleds and preparing for that, and really for survival. But I know business is a little bit like that as well. It is about survival in times. And so, when you were there, were you going to school, or what was your education like? Your early years? Or?
Yeah, no, I went to school in grade school. There's in Fort Chip. It was, grade 1 to 9, and after grade 9, you have to leave the community to go to high school. Some kids went south to Edmonton and Fort McMurray, and some other kids went to Fort Smith. And I chose to go to Fort Smith to get my high school education at least. And yeah, once I finished high school and graduated from that, I moved to Fort McMurray and went straight to work into the oil sands.
So I know that our audience is dying to know, because we like to take our audience through a journey. What was your first entrepreneurial adventure and business, and how did that go? Was it a success right away, or maybe tell us exactly how that started?
Are you asking early on when I was a little boy, or were you asking
No, no, your
after?
first actual, like, when you left home and started your own business after working in oil and
Uh,
gas.
yeah, yeah. I want to go back a little bit too. Not only did back in the early days help my father get ready for the trap line and stuff. I also worked for my uncle who had two horses in town, and he used to haul wood and haul water to people's homes. And so I used to help him hitch up the horses and get all that work done. My other uncle used to manage a pool hall in Fort Chip, and I used to help him there, sweeping floors and cleaning up. And my pay back then was 2 free games of pool. And what I used to do with the free games sometimes is sell it to my buddies to get the cash. But you just as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking of ways of making money and looking after yourself, and that's what kind of drove me early on, and what interested me in becoming I guess, a business owner myself. When I finished high school and moved into Fort McMurray in the oil sands.
Excellent. So what was your first business? What was it called?
The first business well, I started off. I was working in the oil sands. I took an automotive apprenticeship program in Lac La Biche. It was a full 1 year schooling where you did the 1 year schooling, but you got 2 years towards your apprenticeship. And so I did that. Went back to the oil sands, and then I got into an automotive repair shop. Myself and my cousin. He was a mechanic as well. We got into a business and started mechanicking for a while, and then uh, I got into a janitorial service. I got into a bakery. I got into. Meanwhile, at the same time, I'm buying homes. So at one point, I had about 9 houses going on in Fort McMurray, Calgary, and uh, Vancouver Island. Uh, so that's kind of how I got started, leading up to the group of companies I have now, and using some of my, I guess, assets to finance the purchase of Negan, the heavy equipment company.
Great, and what year was that? So how long did that take you, acquiring all the homes? And when you say get in, you mean you bought equity in the bakery or in the businesses? Is that what you mean?
No, we actually started it from scratch.
Oh, wow.
Just yeah, so it was a startup. They're all startups. Started up myself. You put business plans together, financial plans, and projections on what it might look like if it worked well, and all those sorts of things. And yeah, just start them up and work your ass off.
And you were involved in the bakery and in all these businesses?
Yeah, yeah, early on for sure. Yeah.
What did you find as an Indigenous entrepreneur back in the day, and how well were you received? Did you find that there was any kind of racism or people not wanting to do business with you or take you seriously, or did you find it was the opposite, that people wanted to engage? Because reconciliation or reconciliation is a big buzzword right now, and working together and procurement is huge. Can you tell us a little bit about how any kind of challenges or the opposite that you went through as an Indigenous entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's always going to be challenges. When you start a business and you start working at it, there's already people in in that type of business, so you got competition. Usually, those guys, the competition, have a lot more experience and have already the connections and contacts with whoever it is you want to get to work with, and it's hard to break through. Uh, so, when I purchased Negan, there was already heavy equipment companies working for Syncrude and Suncor. There was only two oil sands operators then. And now there's every oil company in the world you could think of are in the oil sands. But there's always challenges kind of breaking through because you're interrupting or you're interfering with contacts or connections that were already there that were built over years before I even got there. So you're always going to have I guess, who's this guy? Who's this young guy coming in? What the hell does he know? Or how does he know how to get, the work done? But you just got to be persistent. You gotta somewhere along the way, even though you get rejected, keep on going back. Keep on, no to me doesn't really mean no. Uh, if they say no, well, I'll come back and try it tomorrow or next week. So that's kind of how I, kept at it. You got to keep on, even though you get rejected a few times, you got to keep on trying because uh, if you're a young entrepreneur starting out, your idea is your idea, and you have in your mind a plan that's going to make you successful if you just keeping at it. Don't give up.
I agree with you 100% at that, and we do hear that from entrepreneurs, right? Is there's a you'll get a lot of no's before you get yeses, but you're very charismatic. You're one of the more likable people that you could ever possibly meet. So, is there anything else that you think that you've really focused on, or some of your strengths that has brought you success, and especially the amazing success that you've had?
Yeah, well, no, thank you for that. I think I'm just persistent and just never give up. And you try one way and it doesn't work, and then you go back 2 weeks later and you try it a different way, and you say, well, maybe not the whole contract, and maybe just a piece of it, just something to kind of hold on to kind of grow your business, right? So as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to shift and change directions. And maybe it's not a D6 dozer they need. Maybe you have to come up with ideas or ways of you have to give them an idea that you're saving them money as well. Uh, so if you look at an entrepreneur like me in Fort McMurray, the majority of the people I hired were all from there. They didn't have to stay in camps where it adds to the cost of doing business. Uh, but not only that, the people that I had working for me, it was like a farm team to the big Sin Group. So most of the equipment operators that come through me, a lot of my guys that were from Fort Chip and the surrounding area went on to work for Sin Group. So I was kind of hiring them, training them, getting them exposure and experience. And if there was a hiring drive at Syncrude or Suncor, I encourage them to move on because they have uh, it's a better place for them to grow and give them a bigger opportunity to expand their own, I guess, desires if they wanted to be something else. And a lot of these guys became managers, supervisors in the field because they were so good.
Nice. And was it in like indigenous people, or was it non-indigenous? Didn't
Yeah, yeah,
matter.
no,
Or
they're all from my home community.
yeah.
All native guys. I could name off at least over a dozen individuals that moved on to the Syncrude and actually retired there after 30 years of working with them.
Wow.
The best long term employee you're going to find for any company is right there in the local area from where they're born and raised. Because technically, or just historically, Native people don't really move too far away from their home communities, and they're the best long term employees you can find. Native people in general have a really good feel for hydraulics. They're some of the best equipment operators you're going to find in the oil sands where I'm from, anyway. They have a touch and a feel that an excavator or a dozer. They just have the knack of knowing how to make that machine run properly. So they were early on. They were desirable to the oil sands because of that, and that's how I kind of float all my most of my employees through my company and onto Syncrude. And when that happened, I go back and find some younger guys to train up again and to move them on if they wanted to. So that's kind of the program I had in place when I first started out.
Excellent. I get a lot of questions, and we're gonna talk about continue talking about entrepreneurism and where you're going in your life now. But a lot of entrepreneurs have still Indigenous entrepreneurs have problems with access to capital. Can you talk about that? Because the scopes of your businesses, from the bakeries to janitorial to up to the level that you are right now, what it would be your advice, and what is your perspective on present day with access to capital for Indigenous entrepreneurs right now?
Good question.
Yeah, no, you know what? Early years, there wasn't really that much access to capital at all for Indigenous people because if we their banks were afraid that if we defaulted on loans that they couldn't access the equipment because we're reserve based. So they're afraid of that. But if you kind of projected now into 30 years, like today, there's all kinds of financial institutions that want to do business with Indigenous people because we have access to a lot of resources that are near and around our communities. So, uh, you know, from at one point being costly impediments to growth for these big companies, whether it's oil sands or forestry or oil and gas or mining, we're viewed as costly impediments because all we want, we're, I guess, uh, we weren't agreeing that the resources should be developed that way. So we interjected and we roadblocked. And, so they're saying these guys are costly impediments to growth. But if you look at it today, and you look at historically all of the court cases that have been won by our people across the country, we have more and stronger connection, not only connection, but stronger, I guess, positions where we could actually own. There's no reason why we can't own an oil sands operation. And, the Fort McKay First Nation near Fort McMurray is negotiating a deal right now with one of the oil companies up there uh, to own their own oil sands operation. In Alberta, we just bought into a pipeline, and there's about 22 communities who own a percentage of a pipeline that runs across the province. Uh, as Mikisew, we own a group of companies. We have a partnership with ATCO Electric, with partnership with transmission lines, electrical transmission lines. So there's more and more opportunities where corporate Canada are realizing now the best way to get access to a lot of these resources is to partner with us, uh, Indigenous people and communities and First Nations, to have access to resource development moving forward because of all the wins we've had in the Supreme Court regarding all this, the resources.
Amazing. Was there one point in your career that, that really brought you the most joy, or is your a great accomplishment, or where you realize like, wow, look at what I'm doing? Is there a time like that?
Yeah, I remember talking to, my management team. I do business plans and budgets and capital purchase plans every year in August. And, I I'm a guy that tends to like just you get the job done, you move on to the next job, and then you move on to the next and the next and the next. And at one point, were sitting around the table and we say we never celebrate our successes. We have to sit down and take the time to celebrate a little bit because I'm not the only one involved. Like there's a lot of people in the background that have been working hard to make our success happen as well. So we just with COVID and being kind of locked in our houses, all of us, and not being able to talk to anybody, you realize, holy shit, like these guys are important to me, and I have to spend the time to say thank you to them and to people who supported and helped me grow as well. So that's what we're trying to do now is to make sure that we celebrate even the small successes along the way because I tend to just move on to the next and move on to the next and maybe I'm just programmed differently in my mind. I don't know, but yeah, that's I have to focus on making sure I take the time to celebrate and say thank you.
I think that's really great advice, and balance is really important. We're still learning because as you know, we work not as hard as you, but maybe as hard, not as successfully, and in different businesses. And let's talk about where COVID. So you have a beautiful child, and she celebrated her third birthday yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
And let's talk about you've got an older family as well. You've got older children, and let's talk about reinventing yourself and being a father at this age in the game, and what you've learned from the past to the present now, and enjoying those special moments.
Yeah, when my first family, like Dave Jr. and Jennifer, uh, I was still working. I worked a lot. I work in 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day. You don't really have that much time to spend with them just because you're working to survive and look after your family. Uh, but moving forward to today, uh, I'm a little bit more, I guess, financially independent, where I could spend the time to make sure because as soon as baby girl was born, uh, she was already on a plane 2 weeks after she was born, traveling with us. She comes everywhere with us,
Mhm.
and I wanted to make sure and do that because kids are only with you for a fairly short period of time in the lifespan of all of us. A lot of kids are here till they're say 18 years old, and then they're off on their own. And you only have 18 years to make an impression, or to help them, or to steer them in the right direction, or to advise them, for all the good stuff. And then they're gone, and then you only have the most I guess impressionable years are going to be those years, and to set them up on a pathway where hopefully they take some of your advice and use it themselves. So yeah, no, this time around, baby girl's 3 years old. Hopefully, I'm around when she's 30 years old to see how her growth happens.
It is amazing. You never know. I mean, our oldest went to leave to play junior hockey when he just turned 16, and I never
There-
would have thought that would have happened.
No,
Yeah,
and it,
and sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, and I mentioned that Fort Chipewyan only had a grade school of 1 to 9. I left home when I was 15 years old and never went back again. Went from high school, graduating high school, straight to work. So,
Yeah.
uh, but not only that, we had a small home in Fort Chip, and there's 8 kids. So as you're growing up, by the time as soon as you're of age, you get kicked out of the house because there's no room in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because we have a 22, 22 soon, 18 and 12 and 13, and when the 12-year-old graduates, I'm going to be 60, which I never saw coming when I was 18 to have children. that young and being an older. But I think it's really important to have that balance as well. And through successful companies, raising a grown up family that are no adults now, and then having a 3-year old, what is it like to go from having a successful business to being a keynote speaker, to being an inspirational speaker, to being an icon, not only with business leaders being honored by business leaders that are Indigenous, and Indigenous people, and being a real mentor and pride, a sense of pride for Indigenous people, period, but also industry leaders that look up to you for your advice and your work ethic. And I know you've got 3 doctorates. Maybe we can talk about that. One is from BCIT, where I went to broadcast journalism school, and one of our affiliates with the Bears Lair, DJ Osho, also went to BCIT. What is it like to have 3 honorary doctorates, and what is it like to be a spokesperson for just being a successful businessman and at every level?
What is it like? You think back, and when I was started my business, wasn't really that many native businesses around right across the country. So it's hard to go and find somebody and say, hey, how did you get that bank? How did you get that bank loan? Or what do you think I need to do to get the bank loan? Or, how did you get your first contract in the oil sands or wherever you're working? Like there was no mentors because we weren't. This is just over 30 years ago. We were just babes in the woods then. In the bigger scheme of things, I'm talking about, the Canadian economy and the Canadian mainstream. We weren't involved that much in that. So for me, it was always like going out and uh, figuring a lot of this stuff out myself. It's kind of breaking trail, and breaking trail. I mean, on a trap line, if there's no road going ahead for the dog team, you have to you have to take out your snowshoes and break trail. You have to go and walk ahead of the team and break trail for them so they could actually make it to the other side of the lake or wherever it was they're going. Uh, so yeah, it was a challenge for sure. It was nothing. There's hardly anybody that I could call to get advice from. And it was just me going out and working as hard as I could to make it work.
Love that analogy. Amazing. We know you're a big sports fan, and last night, unfortunately, the Oilers lost
Yeah.
game 7. Bad. But the other thing is, through mutual friends that we have that have known you for quite a long time, they said you're a hell of an athlete, and you are a hell of an athlete, and you like this. Did that ever come into your competitive spirit in business? And maybe tell us a little bit about who you are that way.
Or did your business go into sports as well?
Well, uh, yeah, no, early on, I played basketball, I played hockey, I used to pitch fastball, I wrestled, I won a gold medal in the Arctic Winter Games for the Northwest Territories. So yeah, competitive, but it's sports is also like almost like business. The more you practice shooting baskets, you're going to make a lot of baskets when the game comes along. So it's practice. The more it's like Tiger Woods says, the more you practice, the better you get. And you see what he's done over his lifetime. But business is kind of the same thing. You got to spend the time to practice a bit to get yourself ready to be successful in business. Uh, but hey, playing sports for me went right into my mid 30s. Got to a point after a while where I was working so much. To play hockey, we didn't get ice time till midnight. You go home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you just can't sleep. So at some point, I had to just give a lot of that stuff up and focus on my business and making sure that my family was all right. Uh, but sports was it still is now. I love golf. Like I'm going golfing after I finish talking to you guys today. Even though it looks kind of cloudy and rainy right now, I'll still go because that's what gives me peace and maybe just you know some time to think a little bit away from the business side of stuff. So yeah, no, sports has been a really big thing in my life growing up for sure.
Well, nice. And I now let's talk about the Bears Lair, because it's an interesting story, and for our viewers and our listeners, the I always say this is that the Bearsler would not be possible without Dave Tuccaro in any way, shape, or form, because Dave, myself, his beautiful wife Julie, and Dean met, I believe, at a BC Indigenous Achievement Award. And I don't know if that's when you were getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, but I remember sitting talking to you and your beautiful wife at a bar area, and introduced Dean, and we talked about exchanging numbers and maybe going out for dinner with the four of us sometime. And that was that. And about 2 years later, and of course COVID hit. About 2 years later, Dina and I were talking about doing a the show like the Bears Lair, an entrepreneur themed show, but Indigenous, and I needed somebody with credibility to who would make a really great judge for this programming that people can look up to, where it's not an ivory tower of people looking down or asking for ownership for businesses, that really can platform and elevate entrepreneurs. And you're the first person that I came to. And when we pitched this to APTN, they said, this sounds like great, great idea, but who would your judges be? And I remember saying, you know what, I'll get back to you, and phoning you up 2 years later, and probably not knowing who I was, and explaining how we had met, and if you were interested, if we were to pitch a show like this, if I could put you on as a core judge. And you, without even a beat, said, yep, I'm in. And when the pitch document did go to APTN, they couldn't believe it. They said, "Are you sure that you've got Dave Tuccaro on as one of your judges?" And it really was a point of credibility, which goes with your persona, to sign on for a show like that. And of course, it took 6 months for them to make a decision and what have you. And now we're on our second season of the Bears Lair. Can you talk about why it was important to sign on to a show like that? And you're so busy to begin with, and you volunteered your time, as well as the great Chief Rob Louie and Tabitha Bull volunteered your time for the first season of the Bears Lair, and why you thought it was really important.
Uh, for me, like I think as entrepreneurs, and once you start, to become a little bit more successful, I feel like I have an obligation to go back and support younger kids starting up their companies, and supporting as much as I can. A lot of times I speak at universities, about business and what I've done, uh, and that's because there's young kids in there who are just starting out who I think, need a like I never had a mentor or somebody that they could look up and say, "Holy smokes! If those guys could do that, then there's no reason why I can't." So I've been volunteering my time. Inspire is a good example. My mother was one of the biggest drivers of education in my community. She was the student counselor. She was the one that went and knocked on my friend's door and saying, "Oh, how come you're not in school? Like you should be in school." That's just the way it was in our community. My mother knew everybody, and she was kind of like the one that made sure that all the kids went to school because she valued education so much. And it rubs off on me, and I support that as well. And that's the reason why I volunteered all that time with Inspire. And it used to be, the National Aboriginal Achievement Foundation. And that's the reason why, when I got called from APTN, I cheered the launch of the Aboriginal People's Television Network, because I knew that's the network was going to focus on our telling stories of our community and our struggles and our successes and our challenges. And, that's the reason why you go in. You just volunteer your time. I volunteered my time on the hospital foundation and the hospital board. I was on the board of Kiana College, just to make sure that we had some sort of input in the direction of healthcare or education or business, or and if I don't do it and I don't give back, then that voice is never there for them to listen to. And I got some. I sat on some the national or the Alberta Chamber of Resources is where all industry players come together to one location to talk about resource development in Alberta and the Northwest Territories and what was required and what was needed and some of the challenges they had to get licenses to operate. I'm sitting at those tables, giving them my 2 cents worth, and as a result of that, you become, I guess, known to go out and help out wherever you can, and that's what I've done most of my life is give back wherever I could, and to see successes. There's another successful business guy out of Fort Chip or Fort McMurray, I mean, Dave Boucher and Nicole. He's from Fort McKay. Dave Boucher used to work for me as an equipment operator. Have yet another young guy that kind of gives me, makes me feel good about supporting and helping. Another young guy, his name is Mike Deranger. He started as an apprentice welder, got his journeyman certification, and then started his own company, a mobile welding operation where have 5, 6 trucks that are running out in the oil sands as a mobile operation where you could go and do welding projects uh, outside of his shop. Those kinds of stories is what kind of keeps me happy and excited about the youth that are coming forward. With Bears Lair, you see the excitement of all these young people coming, presenting their business ideas to us. You could see the excitement in their presentation, in their voice, in their mannerisms, and you could just. And that was me 30 years ago. Like there was nobody that was going to get in my way to for me and my business to be successful. I was just going to keep on driving hard. And it's too bad you can't support and help all of them that come to the show. Uh, but they all get exposure. I never had the opportunity to get exposure like they do, today through Bears Lair. Uh, and all those kids, a lot of these kids are going to be successful no matter what. That's the exciting part of all of this.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember, it was probably 2012, and that's when I first met you. I was working with the BC Mining and Training Association, and you would just poke your head in when you're downtown to say, "How are things going?" and "Is there anything?" and you give some advice, and you just have so much time for people and help, and very much like Gina as well. So you really are the two of you offering so much to people, and you're not asking for anything back, and it's just wonderful to see.
And
Yeah, no, you can only just light the flame, light the fire, and they have to take it. We have a responsibility to support them, but they also have a responsibility to get ready, to have all the ducks in a row, the business plans, the financial plans, your the things you need to get a business up and running, and then you have to go to work, hard work. So they also have a responsibility to make sure it's successful. Nothing comes easy.
no, nothing does come easy. And I think this is a time right now where there's trailblazers like yourself, where there's mentors, where there's opportunities to platform and showcase yourself, like on shows like the Bears Lair. Education's a huge part. Kids camps, getting education. I mean, having a podcast, being in your 60s, having a beautiful 3-year-old daughter, an incredibly gorgeous wife, very successful businesses, and it's just a true testament that if you give back, that life will reward you in so many positive ways. And we just want to thank you so much for being who you are. And are you watching the Bears Lair? Are you watching
Yeah,
yourself?
no, yeah, for sure. And it's like the first season, right? You sit there and you say, "Well, I remember that presentation. I remember that presentation." Then you think back and say, "Oh, there was another presenter that was there that should have won too."
Oh, I know. And
And then
it was very
and then,
close
then
last year with the canine. I see the affinity with the dog connection now because it was Alberta canine, and they were very close, and they were in the finals last year. And
yeah,
now season one, and it seems like forever and a day. Season one has been picked up by CBC Gem. It's on Air
that's
Canada.
awesome.
It's on Apple TV. It's on Lumi, and of course our lovely APTN, and season two is on episode 4. right now, and again, somebody's going to win $100,000, and we're really excited about having you as part of season 2. Is there any quick advice, because I know you've got to go and we've got to
Yeah.
drop kids off as well? Any quick advice um, to entrepreneurs that are listening right now, besides the perseverance and how they can get to the next level if they want to go into business and become the
Sure.
icon like you are?
Uh, just, I guess, back to what we're just finished talking about. The more you continually give, the more you continually have. And whether that's, giving your time, uh, sometimes you're too busy. You just, sponsor, a youth team to go and play hockey or basketball uh, and just taking the time to listen to some of these young kids. You're giving them that time, but you're not just doing that. It makes you feel better about yourself as well, because the more you have. So that's a little small, bit of advice. Yeah, just remember, the more you continually give, the more you continually have.
You are such a phenomenal person, Dave Tuccaro, and it's so honored. I can't believe the chance meeting that we had meeting, because you have really shifted our life, and we're one of the people in the success stories that you have of impacting us and everything that we've done, and so honored to call you a friend, and just wonderful to have you with us today. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you guys for the opportunity, and I'm here anytime. Bye for now.
Great, you're the best. Thanks.
Bye, Dave Tuccaro. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Lair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.